10 o'clock, and I think we might begin now. Members would take their seats, please. Good morning and welcome to the Economic Development, Skills and Policy Committee. As ever, this meeting will be live webcast throughout. Secondly, if anybody's got any mobile phones which they've got switched on, please switch them off. There is not a planned fire test today, so if there is one, it's actually real. And I'll just go from my left as normal and get members to introduce themselves, please.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Ibiwala, Councillor for Nether Edge and Sharrow. I'm also the Deputy Chair of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Minesh Parekh, Labour and Cooperative Councillor for Crooks and Crossball.
Councillor Mark Whittaker, Councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mike Chaplin. I'm a councillor for Southey Ward, and today I'm substituting for Councillor Nikki Belfield.
Denise, I think so.
Good morning, Councillor Denise Fox, Councillor for Burley Ward.
Good morning, Barbara Masters, Councillor for Ecclesall Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Rob Rice, Councillor for the East Ecclesfield Ward.
Thank you so much. And the officers on the top table.
Fiona Martinez, I'm Principal Democratic Services Officer.
And good morning, Sherry Grant, the Assistant Director for Legal.
Kate Martin, Exec Director, City Futures.
And I forgot to introduce myself, Councillor Mohammed Maroof, Chair of this committee. So apologies for that one. Apologies for any absences, apart from...
Just Councillor Belfield, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Exclusions of public and press. I don't think we've got anything that excludes the public and press today. Any members' declarations of interest? No. Good. Moving on. Minutes of the previous meeting. I think they're in the agenda pack, and if there's any issues, I'm assuming members have read them. If there are any issues, please shout out. No, we'll take that as read and confirmed. Any public questions or petitions?
No.
Nope, no public questions or petitions. We move on to members' questions. Councillor Rice.
I would like to apologise that I did not get these questions to the Chair in time for them to get an answer, but I've checked with Democratic Services and Legal. I'm going to voice them here, but I will be providing the text of the questions for illustration in the minutes, and if a reply could be got to me in time, that'd be wonderful. The first is regarding the Sheffield Lunar New Year celebrations. Just asking whether Sheffield City Council has either had communications from or knows of any dignitaries or representatives from any state that will be attending Sheffield's Lunar New Year celebration, and for those to be illustrated and communicated in the reply to this question. The second one is going to be particularly detailed regarding a number of numbers and kind of groupings regarding increase in business rates, but it will be the average increase in business rates for certain business types as illustrated by the special categories by the VOA, and the average increases by ward, but that will be illustrated in the question, and I look forward to hearing your answers to them.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Rice. In terms of the Lunar New Year, we have actually been contacted, but I've not been given any indication as to who the dignitaries might be that would be attending, but I think that is an ongoing event. So we'll come back to that one, and I will let you know.
Can I just say, given the timescale of and the date that the Lunar New Year event will be taking place, that if a response to that could be received prior to the event, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
for your question, Councillor. Just to share for the committee and for those that are listening. And so the Lunar Festival is due to take place in the city. It's organised by the Lunar Festival Committee, which is an independent charitable organisation. The city does engage with the Lunar Festival and supports, as we do with all events across the city, the operational and practicalities of hosting such a successful event in the city. The invites for that event and festival are led by the Community Interest Company directly, but happy to share any further information that we receive in response to the question. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Councillor Perret.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's related to questions I did submit in advance. Question 2, I asked specifically about how we can ensure major events support local SMEs, social enterprises and co-ops. I think that wasn't specifically addressed in your answer. I don't know if you can say a bit more if I can get something in writing. So my question asked what steps the council is taking to ensure our major events support SMEs, social enterprises and co-ops. Right. You didn't address the SMEs, social enterprises and co-ops in your answer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the answer that we've given is obviously there for you, but my commitment is that we do actually try to align ourselves on any event that comes to this city, that all of the people that you've talked about do actually benefit from it. We do have that conversation before an event comes here, so my apologies for it not appearing there, but I can confirm that this is what we do when we plan any events.
I guess it's more broadly, when we have our major event strategy, I'm sure we are looking to how we can support different types of businesses and how we can not just, ensure the major hotels in the city benefit from more visitors coming, but there is a diversified spread of benefits to the whole city. And that is not, the benefits aren't just located in the city centre, they're located to the outskirts, different types of businesses might benefit. I think it's worth thinking consciously about how we ensure this happens rather than just on a event-by-event basis, because we want to support the diversity of businesses and the business base in this city. So maybe it might benefit from more formal thinking through potentially an agenda item, maybe discussion with the Diverse Business Board, which I know looks at different business types as well.
No, thank you so much for that, and I'm glad that you've actually raised it, because we do actually consciously talk about it, but maybe we're not making it formal in terms of, so if you've had a problem not seeing it appear formally, then that is a question for us to make sure that people are aware that we are actually doing that. I mean, events like the Tour de France that's coming here, etc. We're already talking about how wide that's going to be and how the wider business community will benefit from it as we move forward.
Yeah, exactly. It will deliver those benefits to small businesses, but I think we have to think consciously and articulate that consciously as well.
Absolutely. I take that on board, and we will do that. Thank you. I think the other questions were from yourself as well. Is there any follow-up on those? That's fine. Thank you so much for that. We move on to item 7, which is the work programme, and I'm assuming it's... sorry, I forgot your part. I do apologise. I got carried away with all this business stuff. Sorry, Fiona, if you can do the work programme.
Good morning, everybody. This is our standing work programme item, which we look at every committee meeting. I'd like to draw your attention to page 24 of your agenda pack, in which you'll see our new items that have been added to the work programme since our previous meeting and any amended items. This is our penultimate meeting of the municipal year, so there will only be one further meeting of this municipal year to come. As you can see, we've got our items listed on page 27 for today's meeting, and then through page 28 and 29, we have March's items, of which there are currently 2, and our list of items for which we have agreed to add to an agenda, but for which a date is not yet set. As ever, I invite members to suggest any items that they would like adding, and I'll go to questions. I can see you've got one, Councillor Masters.
Thank you. I'm a bit sort of disturbed that sort of the LGBT Q plus question has not come to us in spite of us asking for it for some time, and there's still no date set for it, and I was expecting it last autumn. Also, sort of Ignite the Night, which is a council motion, I mean, sort of to be discussed with workshop. Again, I'm concerned about that, and the heritage update. So when you say, no date has yet been set,
how advanced are these issues so they can come before us, because it's a long time to wait.
So I did have a meeting yesterday with the DSE management team, and we talked about each of these items, and we do have a view to get them onto a fixed agenda soon. I'm not sure if anybody would like to come in on that. I'm trying to think if anybody was in the management meeting yesterday wanted to feed in. Yeah, Katie, sorry. You'll just know a little bit more about it than I will.
Yeah, just to come back on those. So several of the issues are due to capacity. So we've just literally appointed a heritage officer. So on the heritage item, we've got a new member of the team not starting until the 1st of May. So what I'd like to do is get that member of staff kind of settled in and use them to kind of come as well and present to you. So the work is underway. We're meeting regularly with our heritage partners. We're pursuing all of their streams of work. We're working with members on that as well. But in terms of a committee item to come back, we're just the capacity around that. We've not had the heritage officer appointed until last Friday. Ignite the Night, similarly, we've got an officer working group working on that. So that's working across Culture Sheffield, Marketing Sheffield, and also with the licensing and the city centre team, amongst others. So we've met a couple of times. We've got a series of actions that we're working through. And again, it's just pulling that together to come back to something meaningful for committee. So they're both pieces of work that are underway. In terms of the LGBTQ quarter, I don't know if Kate's got an update on, I think that has gone to the planning team for a conversation.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So in terms of that update, I think it's important that we come back and we provide a more prompt response in terms of that question. It is something that has been discussed as part of the engagement for the local plan. So we have had some statutory and inspector timetables to work round linked to the engagement and the public examination as part of that. And as councillors and colleagues know, we have the next phase of that coming forward because we've received the inspector's letter. So I think we will be able to bring back that item and a further update and the wider work that we're doing with a range of community groups who are supporting this issue. But I think the timing of that, we've just got to schedule that and be mindful of the local plan timeline as well, which I'd need to take some advice on. Thank you. But it doesn't stop us actually coming back, it's just the timing of the matter. Thank you.
So if it's tied to the local plan, I can't see it coming before the sort of, the annual Pride events and timetables. It looks like it's going to be way back to the back end of the year. Would that be correct?
I think it's important. We've got to work through the statutory timescales and the inspector's timescales that have been set, and the engagement process as part of that. I think the first quarter of the next municipal year is probably at the earliest we can bring that item back, but I think we're committed to have a discussion with that item and to talk to and outside of that timetable, we're also continuing to engage with those communities and those organisations, and also our own staff hub as well, who are involved in some of the planning for Pride, as well as the wider discussions about the longer term plans for the quarter and how the policy works in the local planning framework.
Thank you, but I'm assuming then that there's no intention of factoring in an event for Pride, sort of it's part of our programme. It'll just be like previous couple of years, something that happens in Kelham Island.
As you know from last year, SCC, the council participated and engaged with Pride last year. We had staff groups that were involved and representing the council as well as part of that, and I know that a number of councillors were also joined in the Pride celebrations. There are discussions, but working with the wishes and the organisations that are involved in planning for Pride and what Pride looks like in the future. But our commitment is still to work with those communities and take a steer from those communities in terms of how they want Pride to go forward in the future. The event is a different discussion as opposed to the local planning framework and some of that wider discussion around spatial planning and equalities. two separate issues.
That's what worries me, you know, sort of, but basically sort of we can't expect any sort of formal engagement as such apart from what's been done within the planning with the groups already, so nothing, no advance there. It's, but we're looking for the longer term.
I don't think that's quite a fair representation of what I've said. The discussion around how we plan jointly with our communities in relation to the local plan and our planning policies for the future, and for the future spatial planning for, in particular, the city centre, is a spatial planning matter, and we are guided by those statutory timescales and the inspector and the legal advice and the support that we have to have around that. The discussions around working with our community groups, our staff hub, the community groups that already plan events in the city, and how that links with our cultural and events programme and our seasonal programme. They are still ongoing, and we've had engagement. I have also met with some of those groups directly. So I'm confident that those conversations can still be had. But we do have to be mindful around the spatial planning matters and adhere to that timetable.
I'll leave it there, thank you, but at least there's two separate strands to this, and we may, yeah, I'll leave it there, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perek.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say on this issue, because it seems also so linked to Transport Regeneration Climate's work, particularly with the master planning for the specific areas where there are already LGBT organisations. I wonder if it might help to have a cross-committee discussion outside of this format, because clearly there's a lot of passion and ideas coming through, but I think maybe we should channel that in a different direction, and maybe we should bring some local businesses to speak to us outside of this forum with other committees.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Paresh. I think that's a really helpful suggestion, because one part of this process is a statutory process around a local plan. The other discussions are about economy, culture, engagement with those communities, events planning, support, how it links with our growth strategy, our culture strategy. So I think having a further conversation around that is, yeah, I think that will be welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is that fine? Yeah, Councillor Ola.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we have a major events plan on the work programme, but no date is yet set. I was wondering, when do we have an idea when that will be coming to the committee, and will it include an evaluation of the recent festive events, highly successful festive events we've had in Sheffield? Thank you.
First.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the major events plan, we have removed it from the March date because we're currently in our stakeholder engagement phase. So the committee will remember that the last time we brought it to committee, one of the actions was to go away and do a piece of stakeholder engagement work. So we are mid that piece of work. It won't unfortunately be finished until the end of February, which is a little bit tight for the next committee date. But what we are going to do in the interim is come and do an informal briefing for the leads of EDSC, which is mid-February, which will include the evaluation of our recent events. What we want to do is celebrate and shine a light on what we have been doing in terms of the forward-looking plan. We'll be coming back as soon as we can in the new municipal year, really, with that major events plan.
Thank you. Any further questions from the work programme? No. We move on to item 8, which is on pages 31 to 70. If you want to go there, and I think Jenny, you're presenting this, are you? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So just to introduce this paper, as part of the performance framework for the council plan, committees or policy committees all have a responsibility to monitor performance within their portfolio. This has taken a number of years, and it's now EDSC's turn. Back in October, the committee agreed to the set of measures that it would monitor. So this report is the first performance report using those measures. It's looking back to Q2, so that's up to September this year, 2025, last year. It's proposed that the next report that comes in June and July, the first meeting of the municipal year, and acts as an annual summary, after which we'll then try and get into a more regular reporting cycle without as much lag, because committee meetings don't always tend to follow with performance reporting timescales. So in terms of the measures, I will just provide a very brief summary of the performance, but it is important to note that EDSC, I think in particular, has a large number of measures that relate to the economic context of the city. So measures such as GVA and job density and startup rates. These are really important for the committee to understand because they help to inform you on the challenges that the city's facing. But in terms of the impact that SCC and the services within this committee's portfolio, in terms of the impact they can have on these measures, it is, I would say, minimal or potentially no impact at all. So they are important, but I think that's just worth bearing in mind when we're looking at these measures. So in terms of a quick summary of the performance, there's a dashboard appended to the report, but the covering report does give a kind of very quick summary. I would say that there are a number of measures which show the challenging economic context that the city is in, but that the services within ESC are kind of responding to that really well. For example, Business Sheffield has supported over 1,000 businesses in the first half of the year. And that's despite not all of the projects and the programmes within it reporting all of their figures yet. In culture and place marketing, there's some really positive data on the visitor economy, seeing a 10% increase on the previous year. And as we're delivering now the culture strategy, there's significant engagement with cultural organisations. In employment and skills, Sheffield is reflecting national trends. It's not the only time that's happening, but reflecting national trends and seeing a rise in economic inactivity, which is demonstrating the importance of establishing the economic inactivity trailblazer. And actually SCC's trailblazer has achieved the most outcomes nationally to date, and some really great figures on social value and the impact of that work. In lifelong learning and skills, figures indicating a continuing kind of decline in 16 to 17-year-olds in education, employment and training, and really positive data on SCC's work on apprentices, but I understand you'll be discussing that in more detail later on. Finally, on major events, which we've just discussed, so again I won't dwell on that, but it's a quick summary, and we will follow. Obviously there's going to be a more detailed report coming soon, and again the annual kind of update at the next meeting will provide more detail. So just to conclude very quickly, the process to bring all these different measures together hasn't been entirely straightforward, I'll be honest, but it has been really worthwhile, and I don't think we should see the data in this report as being in this report for its own sake. It's really valuable in terms of us as officers understanding that data better and using it in the work that we're doing, but also in the scrutiny that you're providing. Hopefully it will also, the evidence and the data within this will be used to inform other decisions, not just this report. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. We have two questions so far. Councillor Rice first, and then Councillor Masters.
So yeah, I've just got a number of points. On table EDSC 001, the narrative talks of an increase in 1,000 people who are listed as unemployed between, and I'm trying to work out the dates, is it year to year, March 24 to 25? 25, 26. Can't really work out from the narrative what, but that's less of the point. Have we got any ability to understand as to where those unemployed have come from? So is it people who have left school into a working age kind of age bracket and not found employment? Is it people losing their jobs? And if so, which industries, which kind of job categories have been kind of contributed to that? I'm going to just cram all of my points together for speed. In table 006, given that we have got two major universities in Sheffield and well, other core cities do include a place like Nottingham with a slightly smaller student population, but also the comparison to kind of the rest of Yorkshire, we are separate. Is there any attempt to remove those who are economically inactive due to education circumstances rather than kind of either voluntary or involuntary lack of employment? The next point, if my phone didn't turn off, I do note that there is always a caveat when it comes to data sets received from the ONS. In particular, this is something on EDSC 007. A small sample size taken by the ONS's annual population survey. Less than 1% share of the working population means the data needs to be treated with a degree of caution. Just wondering, for those data sets where it is taken from surveys and samples of the population rather than known quantities, the addition of error bars might be useful so that we have a level of context as to the uncertainty that we should treat the data sets. And then finally, when it comes to tables 011 and 012, just a bit of data visualization here. If we could get the kind of business opens, startups and business closures illustrated on the same table but in different colours with the same scale, it might help just understand, because especially as the different amount of data, the different sizes of bars and the different things, it's just a tad confusing, and I like high quality data visualization. Thank you.
Okay, I might have to come back to you with some of this with a bit more detail. But in terms of 001, which is on economic not economic inactivity, which one is it? Unemployment rates. I don't know in terms of the timings. I'm conscious that there is the narrative there actually is a bit out of date. So we can update that and I can get back to you. But it is it wouldn't really time with. There isn't anything that strikes me as being a particular reason behind that. And again, probably useful to also. This is why it's also useful to look at other cities. We like to compare ourselves with the core cities, and often, they are showing different. They're often showing kind of similar patterns, and it's always quite interesting when we're not. So if I can come back to you on that particular one. On 006, on economic inactivity, I don't think the I'm just looking at a few of my colleagues, I don't think the education students have been removed from that data. That is the whole of economic inactivity. But again, that would be really useful to dig into. And again, we can follow up on that. I do know it's not the kind of biggest cause of it. The biggest cause is still still long-term sickness. Thank you, colleagues. On 007, which is really helpful feedback on the error bars, and also again for business startups and business closures. I probably should have said that in my introduction. I really am kind of keen for any feedback on how you want to use this data and how you want it presented. So really helpful feedback, and I'll
So can I just make an extra data viz point, because I like the kind of visual side of it, and especially if people outside of this chamber, outside of the teams, are looking at it, helping us understand as a city where our strengths are. There is a lot of comparison and kind of drawn in the narratives between Sheffield and other core cities. This isn't a definite ask, and how you visualise it, whether you think it's appropriate, I'll leave up to you, but the opportunity to have shadow information as to the average rates in core cities, so that on a graphical illustration, those changes, and I think on the bar on, was it 001, that uptick between Q4 24-25 and Q1 25-26, whether that is illustrated in other core cities or whether it is a Sheffield specific jump, would help to illustrate as to whether or not this is something that we should be concerned about, or whether it is just a general countrywide issue.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think the key takeaway from that clearly is that there needs to be some correlation between us and the core cities, and see where we sit with that, because that gives you a slightly better picture of how well we're doing in Sheffield. But Councillor Masters.
Thank you. I'm asking for clarification, really. First of all, on page 36, Business Sheffield, the last point, office take-up declined. Now, I do remember sort of the precursor of this committee, how concerned we were about the investment Sheffield City Council had in the West Bar development. And we were assured that there was a huge demand for offices. So I know that you're saying that we can't directly influence it, but is there some background as to where the demand has been and which sections it has declined in? Because it does say sort of lack of inquiries currently, and that's a worrying trend, if you like. The next thing is page 37, where you say culture, economic context measures. Part 2, hotel occupancy is slightly down over the period. Can you clarify? Because it says there's more hotels, so that implies more beds. So is it the percentage down, or is it the number of rooms? Because on the other page, next page, you talk about there's 1.98 million overnight visitors staying in the city. So basically, have we had more overnight visitors staying, yes or no? And have they been in hotels or maybe Airbnbs that you know of? And other points are being covered elsewhere. And page 41, part 2, 285.2, you said address our weaknesses. But there's nothing to say what our weaknesses are. I think we're always told what our strengths are, which are excellent, but it'd be nice to know what weaknesses you've identified as well. Thank you.
Okay, again, on office take-up, I don't have that background. Again, just looking if any colleagues, could I just bring in Yvonne Asquith, who has more of the kind of business knowledge?
Thanks, Joan. Office take-up is quite complicated and is also about the supply of office as well. So we actually had an investment team meeting yesterday, and the picture is slightly different, I think, this year than it was last year. But it is often about the supply of office in the city centre as well. So that's something I can get more detail on to give you more detail about that particular figure. Last year it did decline quite significantly, but this year we're expecting that to increase. So we have the innovation spine, for example, in the city centre, which will bring more lab space available in the city centre, so we hope that will increase, and there are other inquiries as well that we are dealing with. But last year in particular did see a particular sort of decline in office take-up.
Basically, was it the type of office on offer, or was it across the board? Because small spaces, large spaces within the city.
It is across the board, yeah.
Right,
it's the full. It's done by square footage, so it's across the board.
So on hotel occupancy and Katie, have you got any context? Can we come back to you on the hotel occupancy? It's a good question. And again, sorry, Katie. So this is where it's a bit of a team effort. The responses here on the major events. So this was around weaknesses and challenges in response to major events. Is there anything more you want to say on that, or just we have got obviously the major events paper coming in the next few months?
Yeah, it's on, so we will be coming with a major events plan, and it will absolutely include those weaknesses. I think just to highlight some things I think have come to committee before, it's, there's a degree of scale and size of venues that mean that some events aren't suitable for Sheffield. So that's, you know, one of the things that you hear, and, you know, we've had that kind of feed into the process already. We do, you know, we're very successful as a city for major events. There's lots and lots of positives and lots of strengths that we do have, but yeah, we will make sure that we pull out those weaknesses in the major events plan when it comes back, and also in that briefing that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
I'll say thank you for that, because yeah, these events, the suitability of events, I know is one issue, but I'd like to know more. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, not a problem.
Thank you for that, Councillor Perret.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Phyllis. It's a really helpful report. It's really helpful data. I think, you know, it benefits our work greatly. I just had one, I think, general question, not general, specific question. Page 48 has the median weekly full-time wages broken down by gender, which really helpful to have that visualization and to see, you know, wages are increasing, but also that gender pay gap is staying quite steady. Obviously, tackling the gender pay gap has been a priority of Simca and the Mayor. I guess as a question about how we can use this data in a specific example, are there recommendations you and the team might like to see us pursuing how we can do more to tackle the gender pay gap, and I'm sure ethnicity pay gaps as well?
That's a fantastic question, and one I don't feel particularly well equipped to to answer. Again, looking if any colleagues have any ideas, but it might be something we could come back to you on. But sorry, just from my own background kind of knowledge, I know that you know, things around kind of part-time working and our kind of relationships with employers and the chamber, and working with them to ensure that kind of flexible working practices are there to make sure that kind of people don't feel that their careers are being curtailed by needing part-time work. Those sorts of ideas. But yeah, it'd be good to. Oh, Laura's coming to add to this, but yeah, we can kind of come back with a fuller response to that.
Yeah, just specifically around the gender pay gap. I mean, it is significant, and a lot is down to carers and parents, and actually on our employment programmes, they make up the highest percentage of people, the barriers that people are citing as the reason that they're not working. There are some specific contracts and projects that we commission that are aimed at women and particular communities. Like, for instance, we've got a contract that targets Pakistani women. We've got a contract that targets Roma women. So we work very proactively with that. We are hoping that some of the child care or the early years reforms will have a significant impact, where it's now the government have made it that young children who have got working parents from 9 months old are able to access childcare subsidies, significant childcare subsidies, and every parent should have the right to demand wraparound care around school, so breakfast clubs and after school clubs. It is a process, and there are areas of the city that are struggling to provide some of those places, but you know, it is being worked on significantly. There's been funding provided, and I know that the early years area of the council are working really proactively on getting that coverage across the city.
Really helpful answer, and yeah, I think it's something that I'm sure the rest of the committee would appreciate more recommendations and work on as well.
Thank you for that. We might as well have all the officers there now. I think it's because that many times I think it covers all sections, doesn't it? Really, the questions that are coming forward. Councillor Ola.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's more of a comment. I'd like to say I really welcome this performance report. It provides an objective, evidence-based picture of both our strengths as well as our challenges. There are, as you said, a lot of positives in the data. For example, there's been significant growth in the cultural and creative sector. I think in the visitor economy, there's been a 10% increase on the previous year. The Sheffield visitor economy has generated over £1.85 billion, which is to be celebrated. We've got fantastic major events plans. There also are areas of challenges, for example, to tackle economic inactivity, provide better support for startups. But all of this helps us, not only officers to make it better informed decision to officers, it also helps us as members as well. So I'd like to thank you for putting this together, and I'm sure it was an easy task to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor-elect. Councillor Whittaker.
Some of this has been touched on since I put my hand up to speak, but nevertheless, I'd just like a specific understanding for my own clarification on the 1.85 billion. Clearly, no relation between that and people staying in hotels. So a vast amount of this number must be day visits, I'm presuming. Tram lines and stuff like that could account for some. It's a very, very big figure, though. I mean, how is this figure collated? Have you got some way of, you know, credit card spends in shops and restaurants, and how are visitors differentiated from local people going into town for just a day out? You know, I don't quite understand how you get that figure. Thank you.
Okay, for me to pick that one up, Chair. Yeah, so the data's derived from something called the STEAM data, which is the I'm just checking, Scarborough Tourism Economic Activity Model, which is used across the UK in many cities. So it's operated by a company called Global Tourism Solutions. So we do this every year. So we've got comparable year-on-year data. There is a beautiful, I could put it up on the screen, but a really detailed kind of set of data that we get with all sorts of infographics, which I will circulate to the committee actually, because it drills down to some of those details about hotels and that question that Councillor Masters had, as well as yourself, Councillor Whittaker. So that's what it's derived. It's not credit card data, so it's a whole range of other analysis of hotel data and other accommodation data, but you're absolutely right in terms of the big driver for Sheffield of that total economic value is day visitors. So we get a large proportion of day visitors, more so than other cities. And one of the drives for visitor economy and the work that we do with our destination management plan is to try and get more overnight stays and to lengthen those visits so people stay for longer. But I will circulate this, which gives you pages of data to kind of drill into and compares year on year. So this will look at 2023 versus 2024. It's slightly behind the curve because we get it in the summer for the previous year. So it's kind of reflective rather than live. We are talking to colleagues about some of the other ways that you can monitor footfall and you can monitor data through credit card data, and also how we get a more accurate representation of what the footfall in the city now looks like and where people are going, because obviously the city has changed a huge amount. So it's an ongoing piece of work really, is to look at how we best manage that. But the STEAM data is the kind of global recognised benchmark that lots of places use.
Thank you very much. That's clarifying it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nottage.
Thanks, and apologies everyone for being slightly late. So there's really interesting sort of contextual trends which we can't drill into in this room because they're not really in our purview. But just relating to indicator 21, which is in our remit. At first glance, it looks like we're doing quite badly against target, but it's a cumulative target that is being compared to the last quarter. Would it be possible to have either a target that's broken down quarterly, so we're comparing similar sort of periods, or display the cumulative value on that headline? Because if you go further down, there's another graph that shows a distinct upward trend in this metric, which is encouraging. But it'd be very interesting to know where we're at, either comparing period for period or cumulative to cumulative, if that makes sense.
Sorry, could you just confirm which measure?
Page 55, indicator EDSC 021 for the amount of private sector investment we've leveraged in.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? Trying to.
So we've got latest value is 820 and against a target of 3.5 million. But I think it's doing us a disservice displaying them like that, because it's a cumulative target, and the latest value is just the last quarter.
I'll just bring in Yvonne, because I think this sits more in her service.
Yeah, so just so I don't get confused on this, I think this is explained in the actual report. So
This is just about data collection, actually, Henry, and the way that we collect the data under the contracts for those. Next quarter, I think it does say in the narrative, that should rectify itself. So we don't have any concerns about jobs created or safeguarded against our targets.
Yeah.
And next quarter will be, we should see that increase next quarter because of the data collection being done for a number of projects where job creation is part of the target. Was it job creation and safeguarded?
Well, it was the private
so, no,
sector investment, but they're all in the same sort of subgroup.
Yes,
as well.
Yeah.
I thought it would be useful to understand what the target would be for our current point in time, if that makes sense.
So it's, yeah, you're saying it's giving us a disservice because we've got the annual target. So this is kind of feedback on how we're presenting the data.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry. Okay. No,
I'm not concerned about the performance. I just think it's not looking as good as it should.
Yes. Yeah.
If it was phrased differently on the first page, I'm aware that further down, when you look at the trend, it does say that it's a cumulative target.
Yeah, we can look at the way that's presented, definitely.
Yeah, that's really helpful feedback. Thank you, Henry.
Sorry for that misunderstanding.
I generate a lot of them, it's my fault.
No, thank you for that, and I thought it was quite an important report that everybody got some input into it because it's covering the whole portfolio, and clearly there are. Ben?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we finish, I think, first of all, thank you for Jen for putting this together for the whole portfolio. I think what you've been provided with is a very significant amount of data and information, and you've all expressed that it's very useful. This is going to be an iterative process, I think. Obviously, this is the first time we've actually formally presented the performance data to you. Your comments have been really helpful, and outside of the committee process, clearly we'll happily take on feedback and how we can present this in a way which is digestible. I think is probably the best way, because there's so much here, whether in outside committee meetings, if you want to focus on certain areas in the future rather than trying to go through the whole set of data, that's something which clearly we can look at to try and address what is a very significant amount of information, and probably feels like a bit of an overload if you try and look at all in one go. And I think Jen certainly, and I've even more so, suffered from trying to sort of look at it all and take it all in. And as you can see, it does really impact on the whole of the service, and that's why we've got all four heads of service here to make sure that we can address any detailed questions. But as I said, thank you for your comments. I think they're really welcome.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo that, in some sense, it's lucky that we have the work programme before this, because I'm sure if it came afterwards, we'd have so many more different suggestions for it, but it's really helpful data, and I know it's going to inform a lot of our work in future and what we ask for, so thank you again.
Any further questions before I summarise on this one? Councillor?
But very short and hopefully easily digested. Obviously, we've got this as a PDF, which means the page controls don't work. What format was it originally done in, and would it be possible for us to get it in that format?
It's in Power BI, so if you feel confident with Power BI, I can check if we can circulate it.
As a regular user of Power BI, no one understands Power BI.
But yeah, I can look at circulating something.
I was going to say I love a bit of Power BI, but I'm not going to be around for very long, so do not take that into account.
Thank you. I'll see if I can circulate something.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the officers playing the sort of relay here today, which was quite useful because it just shows that the whole portfolio is actually covered in this report. And I think there's a few takeaways clearly from that, and I'm not even going to debate what Councillor Nottingham and Councillor Rice have said. I don't even understand it. So I think from a perspective of, because these reports are also public, it might be helpful to be a little bit more clearer in what we do. But this is the first time we've done it, so it's that there are a lot of learning to be done there. But it just goes to show that how many things we're actually involved with. So I'm not going to pick up on the sort of minor negativities around it. But the positive side is, what I've learned from it so far this year is that the culture area is absolutely thriving and is beginning to make an impact in the city and nationally. In terms of the business side of things, yes, we are seeing a slight difficulty in the economics, to be fair, but we've been out to 6, 7 or 8 different business centres. We're talking to people. We're bringing live stories here where people have actually benefited from it. So live stories are always good, and I hope this continues in future committees as well. In terms of major events, what can we say? We had a fantastic 2 weeks where we've announced quite a number of major events for the city, which can only benefit the city. And the question that Councillor Whittaker asked is a question that I was going to ask as well. The number seems very, very high, and sometimes I'm thinking, how high is that figure? And I don't actually see it, but probably we don't see it. But what we have done, Councillor Whittaker, is we pulled a team together, and we're looking at the visitor economy and see if we can increase the day visits to something like a city break. Sounds a bit, well, it sounds as something that we can do, but we are looking at that. And we had a little bit of a get-together on that. In terms of the question that you are asking, Councillor Masters, around the office uptake and all the rest of it, I was holding my lip here thinking, that's my day job, I can answer that question for the next hour or so. But I wasn't going to, but it is a very challenging market out there, which is, it's credit to any city who can actually bring in office users at this stage, and I'm talking nationally, and I deal nationally. So it is a difficult area, definitely, and the commercial property market is, as I said yesterday, a very difficult area as well. So we are faced with national challenges as well. So sometimes we beat ourselves up about it, but that's a challenge elsewhere as well. So if we can be ahead of the curve, then that makes it better for us. So all it remains for me to say is we're receiving this report, aren't we? I believe. So if everybody's happy with that, then thank you, and thank you to the officers again, and thank you, Jenny, as well, to put you on the spot there a little bit, I thought. Yeah. Moving on to item 8, which is item 9, sorry, pages 71 to 96, and that's yourself, Ben, isn't it?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I wish I wasn't having to come back and do this every year and set out our programme for 26-27 this time. We're desperately trying to secure long-term funding for our activity, but that just doesn't seem to happen at the moment. So this report has come to you setting out the programme, the core activity of the team for 26-27, utilising the majority of a new funding, which is called the Local Growth Fund. This has replaced UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which we've had the benefit for the past 4 years, and is again coming via Simca. The report sets out initially the activity we've been undertaking this financial year, and Appendix 1 indicates that the type of outputs and outcomes which we are delivering and should be delivering pretty much in full across the board. And I think comments from yourselves in the past recognise the value of our programmes and activities, which are appreciated by residents and businesses across the city. As I say, the Local Growth Fund has replaced the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It's not a universal fund across the whole country. It's been quite selective in where it goes. Fortunately, in areas where you have a combined authority, local growth funding has been allocated, and Table 1 in the report sets out the allocation to South Yorkshire, which is for 4 years, albeit there's a gap in terms of revenue funding in the 4th year. The key point to note in terms of the allocation to South Yorkshire is it's initially less than we currently receive, and there is an increasing allocation in terms of capital and reducing amount of revenue. And as you're aware, the vast majority of activity which takes place in our directorate is in relation to revenue activity, so it has quite severe implications as far as we trying to manage our programmes. Notwithstanding that, we have been able to pull together a programme which largely respects the activity we've been undertaking this year. Simca have agreed in discussion with the local authorities that they will provide funding at 90% of this year's current allocation, so a 10% reduction. Within that, we are seeing an increase in capital compared to revenue, but we've been quite clever in how we utilise that capital and allocated it to projects where that capital can be used and where currently revenue is being used in this financial year. That has mitigated the impact of a reduction and the switch from revenue to capital largely. There is also some underspend of UK Share Prosperity Fund going into the overall package. So that means, as I say, it's an overall 10% cut. The ability to mitigate the capital and revenue is built into the programme, and as you can see in table 3, we set out how the funding will be utilised next financial year. Probably the largest area in terms of quantity of reduction is in the skills and employment area, but that's partly mitigated through other programmes which sit outside of this funding, where some of those activities can be picked up in the economic trailblazer, for example, inactivity economic trailblazer. So we think we can pretty much carry on largely providing the services for next year, as we have done, obviously with a slight reduction in activity across the board, but I think hopefully it won't be felt significantly by businesses and residents. A critical part of next year is actually going to be this engagement with Simca. As part of a transition year, we've agreed, again collectively, that there's going to be a full review of activity across the board in terms of business support, skills and employment, the culture and tourism offer, and community activity as well. And that will have a significant impact, we suspect, on programmes from 27-28 onwards. We can't tell what that's going to be, but we suspect that funding towards our activity may be harder to find, and that's where we hopefully have our gain share funding, which we've brought to you in the past in terms of ability to address gaps in programmes. That will hopefully be available to pick up some of the shortfall in funding going forward. It's also an opportunity to actually review some of our programmes as well. So we're currently undertaking an impacts review of the services we provide to determine whether they're appropriate, where they're delivering the greatest impact, and whether there's actually a justification maybe to stop some things and start some new activity as well. And that sort of leads on to the final part of the report and Appendix 3, which sets out a short programme of new activity utilising £1 million of gain share revenue to trial some new areas of activity. These are programmes obviously we'd like to do but haven't necessarily had the funding. It's an opportunity to look at some of our skills areas, and we're targeting specific locations in that respect to introduce some additional business support activity, and to again support the events programme and maybe bring in more activity. And again, with that strategy coming forward, we'll be able to identify some of that activity as well. So we're utilising that million to cover all elements of the service, and test some ideas, and potentially with appropriate funding going forward, maybe take some of those forward or stop if they're not having the impact. In respect to the skills element, because of the nature of activity, a one-year pilot programme wouldn't be sufficient, so we're proposing to utilise the funding which you may recall back in February last year, I think it was, we established the Economic Programme Reserve, where we stashed away some funding from previous programmes. That will underwrite the second year of those skills programmes, so it's a meaningful product and not just a start and stop within 1 year. That's basically the report. The recommendations are very much similar to previous proposals over the years. It puts in place all the necessary measures for us to deliver a programme, and because we're bringing it to you relatively early, is in February instead of the end of March, March, we're hoping with your approval, and then following submissions to SIMCA and early approval from them, we should have a fairly seamless transition from this year to next. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ben. I've got a question from Councillor Masters. And
Right, me first then. Thank you for that. And, you know, I've always been so impressed with the work that the team have done with very limited funds. So I think, you know, everybody feels the same. So, but there's always questions. Now, one's a comment, really. The first one is, you're talking about engagement with SIMCA. And I'm really concerned about the increased length of the decision-making chain, because sometimes you've got to act so quickly to secure things. And having all my experiences with SIMCA suggest that it takes a long time to get any sort of information out of them and reach a decision. So that does concern me if we have to negotiate with SIMCA the whole time. And also, simply because everything is centralised now, the effect of the funds being diverted from the pot of money available into securing extra office, staff, space, and all the ancillary things that go with it. And it worries me that even though that pot sounds okay, it's disappointing, but it's going to be decreased even further. So that's my comment, and I don't think you can do anything about it, really. But the other point is page 77, 1.44. You know, it says that we we get less than other cities. Sorry, I think I've just misread it. South Yorkshire invests significantly less in business support, around half of places like Liverpool. Now, I first read it as saying that we actually get a lot less money to invest, and I was wondering what criteria are being used that actually directs funding elsewhere. Because if we're investing less, then that suggests that maybe, you know, sort of, we can't comply with criteria to support greater investment. Does that make sense? Oh, you give it a go. Thank you.
So in response to the first question, I'm very pleased to say this time round, we've, in discussions with SIMCA, they have put in place a delegated position, which went through SIMCA board last week, I understand, which means that the local growth fund and our gain share proposal doesn't have to go to the SIMCA board. It's delegated down to their officers. So on that basis, in respect to this activity, it should go through relatively quickly. We've got a series of dates where we need to try and hit them, and ideally we might even get an approval through in February, if not early March. There won't be a huge amount of negotiation in terms of the terms of the funding. They'll be pretty much standard and what we're used to. So I'm hoping, subject to them processing the actual application relatively quickly, and they know what they're going to get, and its activity broadly based on what they had for this current year. So I'm not too concerned about that. Other areas of applications to SIMCA, I think, yes, sometimes they do take a long time, and that's not always their fault. There's a lot of issues in terms of how projects are presented to them as well, and obviously meeting their timescales, and they have a lot more assurance to go through than we would necessarily, just because they're reporting to government. But I'm sure we all want to see those processes and timescales reduced. In respect to the business support element, I think that's a reflection of the fact that different core areas or combined authorities have decided to allocate their funding in different ways. So in South Yorkshire, or rather in Merseyside, and I think in Manchester, you'll be aware of the gain share funding. A lot of their funding has been directed directly to business support. But what they haven't done, as we have done in South Yorkshire, is allocate gain share to each local authority area. So they've centralised their gain share and targeted it in a thematic way, rather in South Yorkshire, we're more targeted in a geographic way, which is why we honestly want to use some of our gain share to top up some of those thematic areas. 1 million just this year, this proposal for our area in in this report. Things might start to change going forward, and particularly with the introduction of the integrated settlement, which we'll probably provide a briefing on, where Simca are now going to get one big pot of money against some thematic areas, but with a potential ability to move some money around within those areas. So that might mean there's an ability to start to target money in areas of business support rather than transport, for example. There's obviously issues of concerns about capital and revenue of all of that. So there's slightly more flexibility being introduced, probably not in the first year of the integrated settlement, but beyond. So that might mean that there's a bit of a shift. Clearly, we'd like to invest more in business support. In fact, in all of our areas, we'd obviously love to be able to invest more, but we're constrained with what we have at the moment, so we'll maximise whatever we can do with that funding.
Thank you, I found that very useful information. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nottage.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for this, Ben. Apologies if this is me asking you to dumb it down to a level where it doesn't stand up anymore, but what's Simca's rationale for increasing the capital allocation and decreasing the revenue? And along with that, if we found a mechanism to effectively continue higher revenue spending, does that place us at any increased risk?
So in terms of the position with Simca, they are just passing on the funding from government. So it's government who's revised the way the funding is coming through. UK Shared Prosperity Fund was very much revenue funding, and LGF is reverse that, and Simca have passed it on to the 4 local authorities in proportionally in the same way that Shared Prosperity Fund has been allocated to us in the past. So unfortunately, that's the problem. As I say, we have been able to swap around some of that capital and revenue, particularly in our grant programs. So the business productivity grant program and the low carbon project, actually we can use capital instead of revenue for that position. So that's why we've managed to maintain largely the products we've been able to offer. Going forward, I think it might get more difficult. We don't know. I think that's the issue with this transition year. There's a lot to go through with Simca in terms of what products do we want to deliver, what products do they want to deliver, and where we do have the opportunity potentially is with our gain share funding, which is revenue, to try and address some of those gaps, which I anticipate will be coming our way in the future. Does that answer the question?
I'll simplify that for my purposes down to it's the government's fault. So
yes,
thanks.
yes. If you want to put it like that, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ruller.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ben, for putting a comprehensive economic programme for 26-27. You've got low carbon. In the low carbon, would that include investing in developing the retrofit skills, developing that sector? Would that include that in the low carbon?
The project itself doesn't directly invest in skills. It's very much grants to businesses to put in improvements to reduce their carbon. It's largely energy efficiency measures. I think because of the nature of the funding, again, it's another annual allocation, trying to put in place programmes which might be associated with that, whether it's through the revenue funding within this or some of the other skills funding which is available, is quite difficult. If we had a long-term programme, then you might be able to put in place skills programmes directly related to that, something which I think we've done in the past in terms of construction activity. Unfortunately not in terms of that. Obviously there are increasing programmes, and Laura, if you wanted to contribute in terms of those skills programmes for the green economy. But this is very much about energy efficiency, low carbon benefits for business activity, and that's the funding's going in there, and it needs to go in quickly because it takes time to order and retrofit, put the things in place. So on a 12-month basis, it's in and out. Do you want to add anything? Clearly you do, because you've come.
Yeah. Just on the retrofitting skills programmes, so there is, as I reported before, I think there is some air source heat pump and solar solar panel, I'm trying to think what they're called now, solar panels anyway, training, installation and maintenance training available at Sheffield College, and we're trying to develop some insulation programmes as well. But there is a lack of the training in the city, but also because the grants have only just come through for the retrofitting of buildings, there has been like a bit of a tension between supply and demand. So there are forecasts of a lot of demand for retrofitting skills, but when you put the programmes on, actually the housing associations and the council housing have not been in a place because of the lack of the funding to be able to or to want to put staff forward to undertake those programmes. So we're sort of getting there now that the Warm Homes grants have more recently become available, and working with housing associations on that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow up to Councillor Uller's question, I guess with the low carbon grants this year and also previous ones, do we do anything to capture which organisation, which workplaces those are spent on? So who delivers the upgrades for local businesses? How many of them are based in Sheffield? Because that might be helpful data to have. I know it might be difficult to capture.
I'll defer to my colleague.
That isn't something that we capture as a quantity, but we do support businesses to find local supply. It's certainly something that we know that businesses need assistance with because the market is quite saturated. So solar panels and things like that, people do. It can take some time to find somebody who's available, and that's something that through the decarbonisation route map work, businesses in particular want support with. We're looking at potentially doing a drive for businesses in the sustainability market to go on our business directory with a specific category for sustainability businesses. So that is something that's coming out of the decarbonisation route map work. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fox.
Thank you. Well done on what you do with very little money. It's appreciated. Just looking at the marketing side of things, we do get criticised a lot for not telling people in advance what's going on, and you know, and people that come to the city, how do they find out what's going on when they just come on a day trip or something? And it's always broached to me about what about we haven't got a tourist office anymore, but would it be feasible for us to look at, say, leaflets or something where we can put them in public places like Millennium Gallery or that station, or just putting it out there to. I know we've got limited money, but.
Can you turn your microphone on, please, Mike?
Katie.
Like a rotating officer circle. Yeah, absolutely. We take that on board. So Welcome to Sheffield is our main direct. We want to signpost as much of our traffic to that website so that all of the information is there. So those itineraries are there, the content is there. We're really, really diligent. I mean, the team work really hard to put, there's thousands of events on there. Not everybody's obviously accessing that, so we get that. And there's that digital kind of challenge and barrier for some. So I'll pick up with the team about leaflets. I mean, we do leaflets and we do postcards and we do things for very specific events and activities, but we can definitely take that away and have a think about all the wider campaigns that we do. And the money that we'll be using for the local growth fund is around, coming back to the visitor economy point, is around building the city breaks campaign. So the idea that we want people to come not just for a day, but we want them to stay longer. So if that's the case, they need to have a breadth of things that they can engage with and things that they can visit. So we do need to work on that.
I do understand that these are time limited, aren't they? Because when the event's gone, they're out of date. But sort of things that we've got constant, like Kellam Island, and you know, things, the museums, etc. Things like that, we should be promoting as to encourage people that come to the city. Because often, you know, I do the same. I go to that city and then think, what's going off? And then expect somebody to tell me when I get there instead of doing the research before. Thank you.
Yeah, just to come back on that actually, so one thing we have commissioned recently is an updated city map. So there's a new city centre map which is in all of our cultural venues. It's in the libraries, it's in the hotels. So in the lobby of a hotel, if you were staying over, if you visit one of our cultural organisations, you can pick up a map of the city, which highlights all of the cultural and heritage and all the things that you can kind of visit. So we have done that piece of work. And I also was having a conversation yesterday with a colleague in Street Scene about there's kind of posts around the city that do the kind of directional, and a lot of those are quite out of date. And what could we do that's different with those? How could we make those more dynamic and more able to provide that kind of content? So if you arrive in a city and you've not done your homework, which is fine, you're easily kind of signposted, and we can move people around the city more easily and highlight all the things that we've got. So yeah, we are doing some work on that as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nottage, and then Councillor Masters. Yeah, Councillor Nottage first.
This might be one for you to come back to the chair, I'm afraid, Laura. Just to follow up to Councillor Euler's question. In terms of retrofitting, there's been a lot of stuff in the news recently about previous government schemes to install insulation basically not being done brilliantly. And in Sheffield, we've got one of the largest manufacturers of insulation in the country, if not in Europe. Have we engaged with the private sector in terms of developing a training programme? Because obviously they've got a huge commercial interest in having more people out there who are not just fitting, but fitting properly with the right air gap so that it doesn't end up being a big liability down the road.
So you're talking about Sheffield Insulation Group, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure if we were like the BBC where we're not supposed to mention companies, but yeah. I was thinking of SIG, yeah.
Well, if we are, I've messed up there then. Yes. Yes, so funnily enough, actually, I was just getting in contact with them yesterday because we do need to engage with them about a number of things, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Masters.
Thank you, and it's following on from sort of Councillor Fox's comment, because I'm really pleased about the map, that was one thing, and the signposts. But I've raised this before, we've got these digital displays dotted around the city, and sometimes there are council messages on there. Why can't we use those to either sort of show a picture of Kelham Island or Abbeydale Industrial Hamlet, or highlight sort of just a series of the events that are going on, you know, an update on events and things? Because I've been stopped by so many people in the city centre. You look as if you know, and you know, they can be within sort of 50 metres of a place like the library. They don't know it's there or where information is available. So anything to, you know, but it's the digital displays that I'm thinking of in particular.
I think you need to put your mic on again. Ben.
Sorry. Yeah, so with the code signs, they are private, so we would have to pay if we want to advertise on there. And presumably, Katie, if we had funding in the budget, that's something which we would consider. You know, it comes down to how much it costs to advertise on these things.
I have seen adverts from the council on some of them. So what you're saying is they're all private and paid for, and even
as
those
far as I'm
ones.
aware, Katie, I don't think we have any of our own.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the questions. Any more? No? Fine. Thank you for that report, and thank you for the comments that you've given back, in particular around tourism. I know that there is a little bit of work going on, Councillor Fox and Masters, around highlighting what we've got in Sheffield. That's a subject that many other people have raised with us as well, saying there's a lot here, but we don't know how to get to it, sort of thing. So I know there's work being done by officers on that, and I've been part of it, so I can assure you that we are thinking on the same lines. If there's no further questions, then all it remains for me to say is, are we all agreed on this report? Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, switch myself off there. Item 10, apprenticeships, and Richard and the team, you might as well all come forward. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll just introduce us very quickly. So I'm Richard Smith, I'm Head of Lifelong Learning and Skills, and I've brought with me our Manager for Apprenticeships and our Development Manager as well. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Just press that red.
Matt Rogers, I manage the apprenticeship provision for Sheffield City Council, based down at CDC Manor Lane.
Yeah, and I'm Terry Mitchell. I work with Matt at CDC in developing apprenticeship opportunities and supporting people to get those apprenticeship opportunities.
Okay, so we're asked to bring a paper today to a previous committee. I know the committee members are interested and keen to understand more about the landscape of apprenticeships in Sheffield. So I'll present some information from the papers that you've already received. Not too much detail, I'm sure you've had a chance to read them. And then I brought my colleagues with me because I'm sure we might want to go into a bit more depth around that. But just by way of introduction, what the paper intends to do is provide you with information from both the national and regional level, and I've worked with colleagues in Simca to develop the paper, and actually a lot of the tables and information that you read in there are taken from information Simca were able to share with me. But then I've also gone down to a local level, both activity in Sheffield, which I know we're particularly interested in here, and activity within our service. We are a deliverer, as we've just said, of apprenticeship provision. There have been some major structural and economic pressures over the last 5 years when it comes to apprenticeship provision. You'll see from one of the tables around the levels of delivery, which were broken down into 3 areas, but the lower levels of apprenticeship delivery have seen a decline nationally, regionally and locally, but there has at the same time been a growth, particularly at the higher end of apprenticeship. So actually, if you look at the numbers overall, it can appear that it's sort of plateaued, but actually I think the nuances in the detail of which levels we're looking at. And the same would apply to the age ranges as well. There's been a challenging 5 years for the younger age ranges, the 16 and 17-year-olds particularly accessing apprenticeships. There has been some national policy change over the last year or 18 months that's designed to try and support the delivery and development of apprenticeships. So, for example, the duration of apprenticeships has been reduced to the minimum duration, I should say, to 8 months from 12. There has been introductions of greater flexibility with how apprentices can access their off-the-job training to try and give more flexibility to employers. The government have removed the mandatory English and Maths qualification for over 18-year-olds. Under 18 it is still mandatory, again designed to try and encourage more people to consider taking on apprentices. And then there's been a development of foundation apprenticeships. There's been a low take-up so far nationally of those foundation apprenticeships, but again it's part of this picture of trying to develop at the lower levels, recognising that's where the diminishing numbers are. At the higher end, the level 7 apprenticeships have been restricted from January last month to just those under 22, which does present some viability issues about whether level 7 apprenticeships will continue in any great quantity in a national level. Outside of that, from a wider policy point of view, there are pressures. So there's specific apprenticeship policy, but policy around national minimum wage, national insurance contributions, and pressures on small, medium enterprise businesses are a contributing factor, I think, to the numbers that you see in some of those tables as well. I mentioned already about the younger end of the apprenticeship provision, the 16 and 17-year-olds. Just looking locally at Sheffield, I've done some analysis of our young people that are not in education, employment and training, in fact all young people, and what destinations they take after they leave school. Back in 2019, 8.3% of those young people were moving into apprenticeship provision. At the moment, that's 4.2% of the population size, which hasn't changed enormously. And if you look at local vacancies availability, that does mirror the trend that we're seeing nationally. Having said that, young people are telling us that they are keen to explore work-based routes. We know that still remains the case. We've recently undertaken a survey of young people who are NEET, and many of them are telling us that actually work-based learning would be preferable to an education placement. So that's the picture nationally, regionally and locally. In our own service, we continue to deliver through Matt and Terry and our colleagues at the Career Development Centre, CDC, apprenticeship provision in business admin, in management, in childcare, teaching and learning, libraries, customer service, health and social care, a whole range of different activities. Constructions and trades is probably the largest that we do. We have a focus, we try and have a focus on disadvantaged learners, we try and have a focus on providing support for young people that are interested in apprenticeships to do pre-apprenticeship programs, to develop skills around writing CVs, interview practice, all of those sorts of things, and give them support in applying for apprenticeship jobs, because I think the most important point to make in all of this is that the level of apprenticeships being delivered is contingent on the availability of employers to offer them. So it's a competitive market. We've looked at some figures just from Sheffield City Council of number of applicants versus number of posts. The recent data that I've accessed, which I got after I'd submitted this paper actually, shows on average there's 55 applicants for every apprenticeship post. At worst, or in the highest ones, for example in gas fitting, it's more like 80 to 90. And even then I think the closing date is quite a short closing date to try and manage the numbers of applicants. In our provision, just to finish off, and I think I've told the committee this before, and it was in the performance report, we're quite proud of the support that we can offer and the achievement rates of our apprentices. We've been consistently about 10% above national average over the last few years, which is down to the support that we get in terms of funding, but also in terms of being part of the council and our purpose, really, which is to support those from disadvantaged areas. Just from a wider perspective then in terms of employers before I finish, there's, and in fact I've got a quick case study to show you at the end as well, but there are upcoming changes to what was the apprenticeship levy into the growth and skills levy. Again, there's information in the paper around that, and what we're finding is that businesses can find the landscape quite confusing. That's where we work very closely with Laura's service in employment and skills, and in our own service in engaging employers. Got colleagues in our service that can work with employers and explain to them and help them navigate the funding. And particularly around small, medium enterprise businesses, there's been a wage subsidy scheme in South Yorkshire that's been introduced. And again, there's support available there to employers to try and help them consider taking on apprenticeships. At a Simca level, we'll work closely with our colleagues in South Yorkshire. Next week, I'm attending a round table meeting with SMEs to look at some of these issues as well in the collective, and again it's about working in communities and trying to encourage employers from across communities to consider and understand the landscape and what they could gain from having an apprentice in their team. And on that point about gaining from an apprentice, I was asked prior to the meeting whether we could even invite an apprentice with us to talk to you about their experience. Unfortunately, the apprentice I approached wasn't available today, but they did agree to make a video for us. It was only made on Tuesday, but if it's possible to show that video, it's only about 90 seconds long, but I think it speaks better than I can about the experience.
Hi, my name is Charlie. I recently completed my Library and Archives apprenticeship with Sheffield Libraries, and I've now secured a full-time role at Chapeltown Library. I chose an apprenticeship because traditional classroom education didn't work well for me. I have autism, which came with quite severe anxiety, which made school really difficult. I learned best through hands-on experience, and after leaving school, I needed a pathway that would build my confidence and lead to a real career, not just another qualification on paper. The apprenticeship gave me that. I was learning through doing the job day to day whilst working towards level 3 qualification, and I had consistent support from colleagues, managers and my assessor. Having that structure plus reasonable adjustments when needed meant I could progress steadily and actually feel myself growing. During the apprenticeship, I supported customers at the help desk, helped with inquiries, reservations and stock. I supported displays and activities and helped people access digital services. What I love most is that libraries are for everyone, and you see firsthand how much difference a welcoming space can make. The biggest benefit of an apprenticeship is that you gain real experience while earning a qualification, and you build professional confidence in a real workplace. For me, it turned "I don't know if I can do this" into "I belong here, I can do this." What I'm most proud of is how far I've come, not just in the workplace, but as a person. I went from feeling unsure to being trusted, contributing ideas and taking initiative. Completing the apprenticeship helped me secure full-time work, and it's given me a foundation to keep progressing. If anyone is considering an apprenticeship, I genuinely encourage it. It's a practical route into a meaningful career, and it can be truly life-changing. Thank you.
So, thanks to Charlie, I should add, all we asked him to do was to share his thoughts about an apprenticeship, and that's all his own words. So I think we're very proud of what he's achieved, but there are many more Charlies out there as well. But I'll open for questions.
No, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for the video presentation. I think that sends out a really powerful message. This is why I'm very keen on having this sort of format where people see how people have actually benefited from it. Because sometimes just put it in the statistics doesn't actually translate it into real life. So thank you for doing that. Councillor Rice.
Phone. Thank you. You can see I was absolutely miles away scrolling through old council minutes. So I'm going to, firstly, that video and the work that you do for kind of level 3 apprenticeships is amazing, and to see a young person kind of blossoming and really finding a skill that they can get behind, especially in Chapeltown. Richard knows my kind of perseverance on making sure that every part of the city, because people have difficulties in learning and accessing learning opportunities, is all over the city. So it's really great to see it in Chapeltown, up in my patch. And I am trying to find, for the life of me, bear with me, it was about the level 7 apprenticeships, and I can't remember whether it was I think it may have been the November full council. And bear with me, I'm going to carry on whittering along. If anyone else has got any questions and would like to come back to me.
Come back to you.
Yeah, come back to me.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair. I found that video extremely impressive. Could that be shared with secondary schools? And if not I suppose it would be year 10s and year 11s maybe shared with, or at least shared with those schools that have got special needs units that that have kids that have autism and other special needs. Because I do think that really does bring hope to young people who are finding that mainstream education is not working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlie in the video, I mean, we picked him. He was our Apprentice of the Year last year, and it's obvious why, I'm sure, from the video. Having said that, he was disappointed not to be able to come today, so I'm absolutely sure he'd be happy for us to share that, because his point at the end is because he wants to reach a wider audience, and in the journey he's made from when I first met him, when he really was very anxious and wouldn't speak to anybody, and to hear him speak better than many of us can do publicly, I would say, it is a real inspiration to others. So yeah, we'll share that.
Thank you for that. And that's a very good suggestion as well. I think it does send out a very powerful message, and I think we've got a few more of these as well from previous presentations. Councillor Whittaker.
That was actually pretty much something I was going to say. I was going to say, I note as yet the uptake on the foundation apprenticeships have been very low nationally. I mean, can you say why you think that is? And is it because we need to have much greater investment in programs in the schools to really get the message across? I come from Stocksbridge, a town built on our steelworks, which at the moment is probably at its all-time low in employment. It's been through difficulties and everything. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be, because of international events, on the upturn and start recruiting at some stage when I don't know. And we don't have a sixth form, for instance, in Stocksbridge. And a big drive for apprenticeships at some stage would be necessary, I think, out here. Thank you.
I might bring a colleague in a moment, but just to add, just to come back on the point that you've made. There's a number of things happening in the school space to try and encourage young people coming through at different ages to consider apprenticeships. Laura's service have a, I forget what it's called, but an event happening in a few weeks' time, which many employers are coming to, and many schools have been invited to bring young people to do that first-hand meeting of people and discuss apprenticeship opportunities. And one of Laura's colleagues came to a head teachers meeting just this week actually to promote that further. I think the challenge with all of this though will always come back to the support we need to give to employers. So I think absolutely we need to give support to young people and schools and encourage them to consider that route. But as I said earlier, the demand outstrips the supply enormously at the moment, and I think that's where our challenge lies as a team and as working with Laura's team to try and encourage that. Having said that, we are doing stuff in that space, and don't know whether either of you want to add anything about the work you're trying to do with employers along with Laura's team.
Yeah, so we speak to lots of excuse me, lots of employers about apprenticeships. That's what our role is. Along with Laura's team, have a team doing similar things. It's from our point of view, it's employers where the gap is. They don't want or not interested in the foundation apprenticeship. I suppose it's hard to change the mindset is that they've always took level 2 apprentice on, then a level 3 and progress them on. Bringing something new in is difficult to change their mindset on it. And at this moment in time, when we talk about them, they're not interested. They want to go the route that they want. Where they want an apprentice, the difficulty is there isn't many employers that want, enough employers that want to take an apprentice on. And that's where the difficulty is. There's plenty of young people that want apprenticeships, plenty. And that includes people from a special education need background as well.
Thank you very much for that. Very interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage.
Thanks. You very much spoke to what I was about to ask anyway, Terry. But it's a really frustrating picture where demand's really high, and for the individuals like Charlie, the apprenticeships are clearly working. And vacancies are going down because of a lack of employer interest. Table 4 and Figure 1 clearly draw a very straight line between the massive increase in the cost to employers of having an apprentice over the last 4 years. And we took one on at work, and this was about 6-7 years ago, paid him very, very little. And is now basically comparable with taking on anyone else of the same sort of age. Is wage support the way to go? And do we have resources that we're putting into higher level apprentices that we could pivot away to provide greater wage support if that's the big barrier? Because it feels like the real value to the city in apprenticeships is these foundational level pathways to employment.
I might bring Laura over to help us with this one, but I think as an employer ourselves as Sheffield City Council, I think we are part of this challenge as well. There are high-level apprenticeships, not necessarily all level 7, but high-level apprenticeships that we're using our levy on as an employer. And I know Terry works very closely with the learning and development team in the council and the HR services to try and encourage just what you've said, really, to pivot away from spending resource on those in-work apprenticeship development opportunities, which are important, but we need to. Well, our belief is, and the work that we do is pivoting away from that, as you just said, to the low-level apprenticeships. But with Laura here as well, I'll just get some additional thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to mention specifically around the wage subsidy scheme. So wage subsidy schemes are really successful. We know that we had Kickstart a couple of years ago, which did really well in getting young people. And it's often that sort of bridge, if you like, to provide to employers so that risk that they're taking is lower. They don't actually have to pay national insurance on younger apprenticeships, but that's an education thing for businesses. There's going to be a wage subsidy scheme. Well, there is a wage subsidy scheme now that is being offered for young people who are classed as economically inactive, and that is going to pay cover the minimum wage for employers for a 12-week period. There does also seem to be some sort of rumblings at a national level about bringing in a policy of wage subsidy for younger people, but it's not been announced yet, so we wait and see. But there's been talk of that under youth guarantee policy development type of work.
how long does a young person have to remain economically inactive after leaving full-time training or education to
be eligible?
qualify? Yeah.
Oh, no time at all. You know, it's just that their current status is economically inactive. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Councillor Fox.
Thank you. That was my question also, because I mean, I speak to employers and what they tell me is that they can't afford. They'd love to take an apprenticeship, but their margins, profit margins are that slim. They just don't have the money to do that. So obviously wage subsidies would help, but are we lobbying the government for more money, you know, to do this? I mean, 12 weeks isn't really enough. That employees are not going to take somebody on for that length of time. They really need to be saying the 2 years, don't they? The full 2 years to get the get them to engage with us, or you know, or even a year to get them to start coming forward and saying, you know what, I'll have an apprentice, because I do know. We've had Angela Fox from the college be here before telling us that she's got pupils in wanting even day release, and she struggles to get them day release, you know, when they're doing these courses. So yeah, can we think outside the box? Can we help? Can us as politicians help?
I mean, certainly if you're talking to businesses that are keen to take on apprentices, we might be, you know, that wage subsidy might support them, then please do let us know about them. But it's all a case of resource. Wage subsidy schemes are very expensive as well, and obviously we're in a time of finite resources, so you know, that's where we are currently. We're obviously feeding back via Simca and ourselves to central government about the issues with young people. That's why Richard's here, just making you all aware how tough it is out there for young people to get into work and via apprenticeships. And yeah, it's certainly something we all need to be aware of and working towards trying to challenge.
So just to come back on that, it's the master cookers that I usually talk to that tell me about, you know, the business world. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Masters. I've got you, Councillor Rice. You're coming at the end.
I realise I'm going to come last.
Right, thank you for that. I mean, to add to why businesses are reluctant, it's not just the money, it's the investment in time that they have to spend. And because of the economic circumstances, so many of them that I talked to have been working 12-hour days. They just haven't got the time to take somebody on. And also, there's the fear of losing an apprentice once you've trained them. They've gone to all this trouble, and suddenly they go off to a better paid job. And that is such a frustration. That they're the two comments. But so going back to my main points, even though I'm an ex-maths teacher, passionate about mathematical skills, I'm really pleased that the maths and English requirement has been dropped, because so many of the students that I used to sort of work with had incredible sort of numeracy skills, but they could never ever pass an exam. So I'm just wondering how much of that is factored into the application process, because I've tried to encourage employers to let a young person show what they can actually physically do. Because you know young people have got passions, really knowledgeable about one particular aspect of life or whatever that interests them, yet they never get the ability to demonstrate that, simply because applications, you know, not this, reject, you know, regardless. And that's so demoralising for the younger people. The other question, I'll keep going, right, so that's the application process. I am concerned about the lack of support for traditional crafts, especially as we're trying to capitalise on our heritage in Sheffield. And I know that the funding has been removed for a lot of that. We've raised it in the last meeting about this. And I'm just worried about sort of, you know, are there any thoughts about how they can be supported? And again, this wage subsidy scheme, Richard, you said that you were meeting with SMEs around a round table, you know, sort of, so which SMEs are involved? Because traditionally an apprenticeship was for a trade, as opposed to the much wider meaning that we've got now. So I think they're the main things. Thank you.
Just on your first point of applications, we have no prerequisite of any qualifications coming onto apprentices. Terry supports anyone from any background or qualification level to get them into a job.
That's good to know, but the thing is sort of, it's then the follow-up. They've done their apprenticeship, they still haven't got the maths and English qualifications. Does that sort of disqualify them for then moving into a job after their apprenticeship?
No. No.
Just one thing on that. That's us as a provider. Other providers, their recruitment is different to what we do. So, yeah, so we work quite close with employers. We encourage things like work trials as part of an interview process and things like that. Other providers may not do that, and I know some providers will have a strict, you will have, 5 GCSEs, or we won't take you on as an apprentice. You know what I mean? It should be down to the employer, but training providers do have a big influence on employers in the way that they recruit.
That really worries me, that aspect. It's disenfranchised so many young people with so much potential. So anything you can do to sort of, promote that message, they can do, they will do. They'll, it'd be great.
And just in terms of the roundtable meeting next week, that's actually been organised. I'm going to go to it along with colleagues from South Yorkshire's Combined Authority. I haven't got the attendance list in front of me, but I'm more than happy to share that with you. I think it's an opportunity in that conversation, obviously, to talk about wage subsidies, but to talk about your most recent point as well, English and maths, because from an SME point of view, and from us as a training provider point of view, I would hope that we can work more closely with them and encourage young people and older people to access apprenticeships without the qualification requirements that you're talking about. So I'll make sure that's tabled at the meeting next week, and I'll provide you with a list of who's coming to that.
Just as an anecdote, sort of when it came to sort of trying to teach them, every problem I'd present it as a money problem. If this was a pound sign in front of this number and this number, what would you do? And it's amazing how quickly they cottoned on. And so it's they have got the numeracy skills. It's just the ability to pass the exam. It's just about the heritage. Can we do anything to support?
So I did add something into the paper just to try and respond, because obviously that was one of the questions that prompted the whole paper, really. I think, again, it always comes down to the same point about the employers and the employers in the city. There are some employers in the city that obviously do work in the heritage areas. They're limited in number, and I think the point in the paper that I've made as well is that then also limits the people who can train those to pick up heritage skills, and even down to points around the endpoint assessment and finding a qualified person to come in and do the endpoint assessment at the right level. So I think whilst there hasn't been a national decision to cut them, I think the landscape has become so challenging. They are fewer and fewer. But I mean, again, I don't know whether we do specifically work with any of the heritage organisations in the city at the moment, and it would be a more specialist provider that would have to deliver the training. But we can take that away.
I'm just wondering about volunteering you to meet up with the sort of Sheffield sort of conservation advisory group, who sort of might explain a lot more about why this is going to have a huge impact on our existing heritage. Henry might sort of have a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're more than happy to meet with Terry, and I have had a few meetings recently with some community groups as well that Councillor Marouf's put us in touch with. So we're more than happy to meet with anybody and have conversations so they understand how to access apprenticeships. As I say, whether it's us then that can deliver that, or we point them in the direction of a local training provider or regional even, we're happy to look at that too.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Ulla.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, you said there's a huge demand for apprenticeships. For every application, there's sometimes 50 to 80 applicants. Terry, you said the gap is getting more employers on board. Richard, you said we do provide some support. What can we do more to provide more support to employers? Can we review that, what we're doing? Is there a room for improvement? I'd like to get your feedback on that, please.
It's a challenging one to answer it with any certainty, but I think what we are doing, and what I think perhaps we intend to do more of, is speak in the community groups that we've been to, and I think it applies to, we've met with a number of communities. We've met with Sadaka. I'm going to Furvale tomorrow to have a conversation with them. they've got high demand from young people for apprenticeships, but I think we need to turn the conversation around slightly and ask them to meet with their employers from their communities, and ask at a local level that people consider this as an opportunity, notwithstanding everything everybody said already, all the challenges that brings. But we've offered, well, certainly when we went to visit ISRAC to talk to them, we've offered to go back in and talk to employers in their community about what the opportunities would be for them to take an apprenticeship on. I think at a national level there needs to be more promotion and a wider conversation, and obviously we've talked already about Laura's service, the constant interaction they have with employers and the opportunities that creates. I think that's already happening. I think for us, if we can target specific communities and areas where demand is high but also levels of apprenticeships are low, we can hopefully make an influence. But as I say at the start, it's hard to predict whether that will make the sea change that we need for all the reasons we've said already.
I think Denise mentioned about the pressures of business under at the moment. We understand that. But do you think some of the SMEs don't not simply aware of it, or worried about the bureaucracy? Is there anything you can help with that? Just to break down the barriers?
Yeah, so I suppose Laura can answer this at the same time, but we took the SMEs that we talked to, they generally understand what an apprenticeship, or a basic what an apprenticeship is. It is a financial constraint that stops them doing it, and a time constraint as well. But we do, they do have an understanding. As obviously new businesses coming may not know that, but generally people do understand what an apprenticeship is. There is a lot of publicity about apprenticeships out there. It's just getting it over the line, is getting that employer to engage and take on an apprentice. It is quite a big commitment, and it is a bit clunky getting through to start somebody on an apprenticeship as well. It isn't very straightforward, the things, you said digital account to a construction employer and they look at you gone out, they're not interested in, they're interested in laying bricks or building things, but they've got to access a digital account. So we'll support them to do that. So there is support to do those sort of things, but it's not that easy to get it over the line. But they do know about apprenticeships, generally.
Nearly, can you please pass my best regards, best wishes to Charlie? He showcases what we do in his committee. It's not all about performance data and stats and graphs. So please pass up my best wishes to Charlie, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And the final question from Councillor Rice. Keep it.
Back to me. I found documentation, but I'd first like to make a comment on what Councillor Whitaker said regarding value of apprenticeships in our industrial kind of sector. So I work for what was formerly Liberty Steel up in Stocksbridge. I've done a lot of mentoring of our apprentices over the years. I even have gone into Stocksbridge High to do kind of weeks-long systems to try and encourage them into engineering apprenticeships, and the work that our apprenticeship team does up there is absolutely invaluable. So and the way that these kids are brought on and given skills that contribute to our economy is amazing. So I think it'd be wonderful that this happens, and hopefully we'll be going from strength to strength, though there is a reason why I'm able to take 2 days off in a week without my boss raising an eyebrow. It's because at the moment we've got very little to do. So hopefully with enough investment and with spending in the right place, we'll be able to get back there. My main point was regarding a motion to council that I proposed in November regarding the motion was called Advancing Skills and Opportunity Through Higher Level Apprenticeships. So someone else decided the title. I would have gone with something far snappier. And it was about the cut to the level 7 apprenticeships and the illogical nature that they're now no longer accessible past the age of 22. So someone has to do their bachelor's and then go immediately on to doing a level 7 master's equivalent. I know this sector deeply because my housemate was trained to be a medical statistician, a very well-regarded, high-value and important job for the future through the level 7 apprenticeship. And with the age that he started that apprenticeship, he would not have been able to upskill himself in the way that he was. So this change that happened is is against this city, but also this country's desire to grow in a number of areas. I know that chartered surveyors often use it, lawyers, architects, and a number of biomedical science companies use it because it is incredibly valuable to hone skills in a particular area that is slightly too niche for broad university education. So the motion that was passed at Council in November of 2025 resolved to call on the Mayor of South Yorkshire to allocate funding as part of the region's integrated settlement in supporting employers to hire level 7 apprenticeships. Now, I've looked at the communications that when we send asks and requests out to external bodies as part of council motions, that the responses are published. Responses have been published for all the other asks in all the other motions, but neither this request or the one for the Chief Executive to forward a copy of the motion to the Mayor of South Yorkshire and to the Minister for Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education in the government. Neither one has elicited a response, which is deeply disturbing, concerning, given how important it is to our economy. And I'm just wondering whether you as a team, motivated by the motion or in your own regard, have had any conversation with the Mayor of South Yorkshire or anyone in government about the cut to the level 7 apprenticeships, because it is something that is incredibly important in allowing people to upskill and get themselves into roles and give an economy a foundation in high value business and industry.
Thank you for the question. I think so. Currently, no, that's not something that I've picked up with the Chief Executive or with the Mayor of South Yorkshire. The opportunity will come to talk through with South Yorkshire's Mayoral Combined Authority when I meet with them later this week, and I will raise it initially there and see where we can take it. I think there is a challenge in this, though, in that obviously everything that you've said, the need for skills improvement across the country, the need for us to be a leader internationally in all of these areas, absolutely agree with. I think that at the moment, with the way that the growth and skills levy, as well as the apprenticeship levy, is used, I think the data also speaks to the fact that to some extent there's a disadvantage to the level 2 and the foundational level learners. I think what we need is everything, isn't it? We need to have our cake and eat it, so to speak. So, but yes, in terms of your paper, your full council outcome, I think that is something that I can take up and find out where that went after the council met in November.
Thank you, and I'll just make one final. This is not a either or. This is about education. It's about bettering outcomes. It's about the economy, and the idea that when we have to think about this, especially in a city like Sheffield, where we heard previously about the growth in lab space and the uses in regard to that, that we need to make sure that we aren't taking from one group and giving the other. We need to make sure that everyone has that opportunity, because there should not be no barriers to being the best person that you can be, regardless of where you are on that educational journey.
And I think just as educationalists, I absolutely agree with that. I think unfortunately the data suggests there has been a degree of either or over the last few years, but I'm going to bring Laura in for just a further comment as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, hopefully of use and interest, you know, the government is taking an apprenticeship levy from every business that has a payroll of over £3 million. It's the right thing to do, because it is going into paying for apprenticeships, which everybody in this room has agreed is a worthwhile thing. Millions and millions of pounds of that money is going back to the Treasury unspent, and that is where the money is. So the integrated settlement is a small amount of money, increasingly capital money, that is needed across our employment programmes, our business programmes. It's the money that's coming out of the apprenticeship levy, which is held centrally at government, not at Simca, that that should be paying for apprenticeships. So just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, because taking from a very small pot there, actually it's this big pot of money that is being taxed of businesses for the purpose of apprenticeships that we need to be able to redirect into education programmes across the board.
And this comes down to, and I think you've made a very good point, and my issue with it is there are companies in South Yorkshire, there are companies around the UK that do have their wage bill so over £3 million, but due to the nature of their business, and I'm going to use my housemate again, the fact he works in a medical statistics company where the likelihood of them taking on a level 2 or level 3 apprentice, given the nature of their business, is incredibly low, but they are incredibly interested in business, in learners at the level 7 level, that they are having their kind of apprenticeship levy taken, but they have no ability to spend it. And the point in the motion was not about, I understand the integrated settlement isn't large, and the value of the apprenticeship levy that is not spent is very large, but if we are going to prioritise the skills and industries that we as a city need to grow, the number of things that people have asked of the new Labour government, to which they've roundly closed the door and ignored, I would hope on a slightly more local level we can make a point saying, actually, this is an incredibly important thing, not only in Sheffield but around the country. And that's why that was directed to Oliver Coppard and not to the government, because hopefully he might take slightly more of an interest, he might be slightly more amenable than a government who probably goes, oh, I don't care. So this is why the ask was made in that direction.
Thank you.
Sorry, you can get emotional about these things.
Really passionate about this subject, because I think people really do care about employment and employment for young people and apprentices in particular. So I'd just like to wrap it up. I don't think we're going to take any more questions on this. And thank you for coming, Matt, Richard and Terry and Laura. And thank you for hosting me at the Manor Lane Depot, where I did actually meet quite a number of the apprentices, and they had great ambitions for where they were going forward. And when you look at the numbers, 80 applicants for every gas fitting apprenticeship, 50 odd applicants for every other apprenticeship, it just goes to show that people do actually want to get into work, and they get bad press sometimes saying, you know, people don't want to. The problem is with employees, and we need to address that. That's a nationwide issue that we need to address. And as Richard knows, I've met employees as well, and we continue to meet employers to try to encourage them to come into apprenticeships. And the other problem we do have is around the construction industry, where we can't sometimes even get the trainers to come along, because they get paid far more as a plumber than they would coming to train somebody else to become a plumber. So there are all sorts of issues that are around this particular subject. But I did have the privilege last week of going to the graduation of Revolution, which is apprenticeships around rivers and water. And the enthusiasm amongst the people who were actually working in that environment was just absolutely magnificent. So it is good that you've brought this report, and I'm glad that we keep repeating this, because it's a message that, from the debate we've had, I might even have to ask for half an hour extra today, but the debate we've had, that everybody across the board is very passionate about, and anything any members can do, please do. And I think the call out has got to be to employers, hasn't it, really? So if any employers are listening, then please do get in touch with the people in front of us. So anyway, all it remains for me to do is to ask members to receive this report. If you're all agreed on that, thank you so much, and thank you for your time again. Final report is the Sheffield Investment Plan for Growth, which is page 117 on your in your agenda pack. And if it runs over 12:30, then I will have to ask members for an extension. But I hope it doesn't.
Thank you, Chair. I hope it doesn't run over either. It's a relatively straightforward update report to members of the committee in relation to the investment plan The background of this is, you recall, the completion and publication of the growth plan, which was signed off by S&R committee in December 24, and now is very much the framework which we're all working to, particularly in respect to this committee and TRC as well. As part of the growth plan, we committed to the development of an investment plan, which was set out the things we're going to do. And within that, we identified be a two-stage process, one for the first 5 years and one for the second 5-year timescale. And we're still in the process of putting together that first one. So this report just sets out actually what is going to be part of the investment plan, some of which will be very much for internal use, and some will be external facing, setting out what the city intends to do and hopefully be used to attract investment. The actual investment plan and the work we're doing is combined of three parts really. So the first stage, and this is where we've got to recently, is an assessment of everything what's going on. It might surprise you to know that there's a hell of a lot going on in terms of our area, in terms of TRC, and also we want to capture activity taking place with our partners as well outside of the council. So we're initiating a process to capture that data and really have an analysis not only of the projects but how they're contributing to the growth plan. I think we'll find that most projects do contribute, but actually are they having an impact? Are they delivering the type of things we want to see based on what was highlighted as priorities within the growth plan? So that's stage one, and we're going to try and do that as quickly as possible. The second stage is probably the more interesting. We're wanting to analyse actually where the gaps are. So we know what we're doing. We have a pipeline of activity as well in terms of the council activities of interventions we want to make over the next 5-10 years. But we know there's likelihood to be gaps in terms of gaps in delivering against the key elements of the growth plan, delivering those key outcomes, but also there's gaps in our ability to deliver, whether that's in funding, whether that's in our capability and in our own resource. So there's analysis there to be done in terms of what projects we don't know about, which we might want to deliver, and how do we go about delivering them. And there's another critical element of that second stage, which is to help us develop some sort of framework for prioritising. I think if we ended up with a list of 200, 500 projects and presented it to you and other committees, you'd all have a wonderful discussion about what one you'd like to see first on the list. Whether we ever get to a position where all the committee members agree is another matter. But what we do want to try and do is to be able to provide that information in a slightly more objective way going forward. So some prioritisation process, which then enables yourselves, when it comes to council activity, to have I won't say more informed, but a more objective view of, if you do one project, what are the implications, what are the impacts, and the implications of not doing something else. So it's a more informed decision-making process. The final element of the growth, the investment plan, is to actually, and initially it's going to be capturing some of the activity we're doing now, and some of the key investments we want to bring forward over the next 2-3 years, probably timescale-wise, is create an investment prospectus. It's something which we've done previously. We just want to make sure that it's an improved version, very outward-facing, targeting private sector investment. So we want to be able to sell the city as best we can, and the investment plan is the way we can be able to do that. We'll be able to tell people what we're doing, how much is being invested in the city at the moment. There's probably, if we totted up everything we're doing, what our private sector partners are doing, what the NHS is doing, we're talking billions of pounds being invested in the city. We want to be able to tell that story to attract investment, as well as identifying those key projects within the city where we want to see things happen. So that's an added bonus of this piece of work, is to actually create that investment prospectus. we might be able to, we're hoping to have sort of a year one version of that available ahead of the UK REIF, to the UK Real Investment Festival, conference, call it what you like, which takes place in Leeds in May. That will be a first version. I think this time next year we'll be in a position to have a far more in-depth prospectus which really sets out our plans, and with clear plans behind some of those investment opportunities. That's really it in terms of the report. It is to sort of inform you of that process and you know, the activity which will take place over the next 6 months, we think, to complete this piece of work. There will be engagement with a variety of organisations, with members as well, in terms of once we've gathered that information. That second stage, I think, is really critical in terms of we'll be able to tell you what we found, then get your views in terms of, you know, where do you identify gaps in the delivery of the growth plan. And then, as I say, that the prospectus itself, probably a first version for UK REIF this year, and something more developed in 12 months' time. And that's it. Happy to take questions. And also, I should add my thanks to Jen for who's been helping, well, probably leading, I should say, in terms of developing our thinking and getting to the point where we are in a position to appoint consultants to help us do this, because this is a significant piece of work in terms of the amount of information, again, we're going to be collecting to enable us to have a really complete view of what's taking place in the city.
Councillor Nottage.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Jen. Looking at gaps of what we don't do and we don't know about is always the really tricky one, isn't it? Because we don't do them and we don't know about them. Is that a case of sort of blue sky thinking and brainstorming about what else we could do, or benchmarking against what other authorities do that we don't, so we can sort of spot gaps that way?
It's more of the latter, I think. Obviously, what we will be able to do is identify gaps against the growth plan. So previously we didn't have a growth plan, so we didn't even have sort of strategy to say, well, are we delivering these type of impacts in relation to whether it's to a certain skill set or whatever else. We just didn't have that framework to identify, you know, gaps of delivery. So that's a major step forward, and that's why it's so important getting the growth plan in place. We're hoping with the consultants we're appointing who have experience working across the country in different areas, and particularly working in investment areas, that they will be able to identify tangible activity. Obviously, some things are very sort of place specific, some are more generic. So I think with that, and also, you know, input from businesses, organisations, the Volcom sector as part of this process, we as officers will be able to benefit far more from other people's knowledge, rather than quite often looking across each other at a table and go, what do we do next?
Thank you for that. If there's no further questions, I'd just like to say thank you. Sorry.
I can thank you for that. I guess give a steer as well. Obviously, the council's given a lot of priority to community wealth building principles over the last few years, and that's been written into the council plan. I know there's reference to increasing public sector investment as well as private sector. I guess my interest would be how we can ensure a lot of the investment is retained in local business, which I know will come through, but yeah, I guess as a steer, I think that's something I'd really welcome to see as the plan comes forward.
I think that probably might become more transparent when we move into an additional stage, which was highlighted in a growth plan, which is the investment compact. That's still in development, or very much in development. But that might be an area where we do start to engage with partner investors. Part of that will be, as well as what can the council offer to them, is what can they offer to us, as well as investing in, whether it's infrastructure or people. What else can you do? So if you invest in building an office building, they want support from the council. Can they, you know, can we get greater social value from that investment in that way? So it will become part of this, and maybe not sort of in your face in terms of the investment plan itself, but we certainly need to build that into our approach to an investment compact.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from anybody? No, thank you. Sorry, Kate.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just build on the points that my colleagues, Jen and Ben, have set out. I mean, this is a really important piece of work, and it will take some time to bring this together, as Ben says, and we're mobilising some resources behind this to bring this forward. Just setting the context, obviously our growth plan goes to 2035, but also has ambitions in that growth plan to take decisions before 2035 that might influence what our growth infrastructure investment looks like by 2045 or even 50. It is a significant kind of document which not only drives forward economic growth but also our inward investment. And so although we're talking around, you know, this next stage is actually about kind of mapping the gaps in investment, that's also to enable us to start the brokerage between where we have gaps in some of our investment, who are the partners, whether they're city partners, regional partners, national partners, international partners that can bring forward some of the funding, investment and longer term decisions. The growth of the city, the population growth that we have planned for the city needs to have, in particular, significant infrastructure brought forward, energy, power, utility planning, flood management planning, transport planning, as well as a range of economic opportunities that are set out in that plan. So it's a really detailed piece of work which will have some public funding in it, it will have some regional funding in it, but it will also significantly draw on private or other types of funding. And the point you're making, Councillor Parish, in relation to how do we actually drive the social community and other opportunities, well, that's absolutely key, and that needs to be built into this thinking. So jobs, skills, supply chain opportunities. We've just had a brilliant item about apprenticeships. Some of the opportunities that are coming forward we need to plan for. So I just wanted to set out a broader set of context, and my colleagues have shared the process moving forward, but it is to enable us to have more brokered conversations. It will also mean we can have conversations with central government departments, some of that thematic funding, whether it's heritage funding, environment funding, housing funding, hence why the investment elements of the prospectus will need to be more bespoke, maybe for different audiences as well, as we try and share the opportunities that are coming forward in the city. Just a reflection from myself, if that's okay, Chair.
Absolutely fine. I mean, just on winding up that, I'm very pleased that we're going to get the perspective out there and hopefully work towards some other stuff, because we are in competition not with just this country but Europe and everywhere else, and I'm mindful that that was a piece of work that we really needed to do. So basically it's the brochure on Sheffield to say why should you come here, and that's terribly important for us to be able to take that message out to other people. So it just remains for me to say that we're members happy to receive and agree this report. Thank you so much, and thank you Ben and Jen. Before we finish, on behalf, sorry, I'm keeping within the 12, I've still got 14 minutes left, haven't I? 12 minutes left. That's plenty of time for me. Just before we finish, on behalf of the committee, I would like to put on record the fact that we had a wonderful European Figure Skating Championships in Sheffield, and it was a great success, and I would like to put on record, on behalf of this committee, our thanks to the people who organised it, and the partners that we worked with and everybody else that was concerned with it. I think it's very important that we as a committee recognise that work. If everybody's happy with that. Yeah? Thank you. Councillor Burrick.
And I can second that as well. I attended the gala event on the Sunday, and I also know Ruth Mercereau was there for the whole week, and we had a good chat about it. But yeah, fantastic event and great for the whole city.
Thank you so much for
saw as well on the council's Facebook page. There was a lot of good work promoting the wider benefits of what bringing actually competition to Sheffield meant. I also saw some rebuttals to comments on the posts asking how it impacts ordinary Sheffielders, which talked about all the free skate sessions across the city. So I think fantastic example of not only a major event but disaggregated benefits for all people across the city and the skating rink outside just there was great as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Perek, and thank you for seconding it. And the ice rink out there, I think we got over 10,000 plus people using it. Even I went on it. I've never been on the ice before in my life, but I hung on to the edge.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Can I also add my thanks? Councillor Park, I forgot to mention, you told me earlier that we should perhaps now set our ambition to host the World Championship.
Councillor Ola, we are always ambitious, and we will continue to be ambitious to hold even bigger events. Yes, Councillor Perek, I think we have answered his question as well earlier today. So, yeah, we are very keen to host as many events as we possibly can in Sheffield. And to be fair, people that I met, so I've got 10 minutes left now, the people that I met from all over the world, they were here, not just from Europe, and they thought what a wonderful city we were. And things should happen here more often. All right. So, no, it's not on the agenda. I've been told off. It's not on the agenda, but I thought it was important that we mention it here today. So if members are happy to support that vote of thanks, then thank you. And thank you, Sherry, for pointing it out to me. I do get...
This is how we officially record that.
Yeah, so we can officially record it, can we?
Or we can note it on the...
We can note it,
We can note it, but we can't have it as a resolution.
No, it's not a resolution. It's just noting it. I always get stuck with these technicalities, so I do apologise. So thank you very much for attending, and the next meeting is on the 26th of March. Thank you so much.